Don't put all the lights on.
Yeah.
Just these ones.
Turn these ones off and put the other ones on.
From YouTube, as if the revenue comes in from ad revenue.
One more here. Is there one more here? Oh, yeah, I think that's okay.
Oh, right, yeah. Sometimes you can get sponsored from other people.
Right. So it's okay.
And also set your
And then and what, sorry?
set your
Oh, sorry, your own stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we're streaming. I'll just mute my Skype. All right. Well,
Okay.
take it away.
So I will start by asking you a question. What do you, when somebody say animation, what do you assume, or what's your understanding of animation?
Step by step.
Step by step? That's good.
something that's moving.
Yes?
I've always thought extremely, like what King say, time-consuming, tedious.
Okay.
Just in the old days, you had to draw this, then move the hand a little bit.
Yeah. No, these are all true definition of animation, and your feeling of that. Yeah, it's very tedious too. But animation is this idea of change, frame by frame, but very small change in every frame, and over time, it seems like it's a motion. We perceive that it's a motion. It's not like still images. And there's this one example here. Let's see. This is Edward Muybridge. I think he was 1830 to 1904. So he was born in 1830 and he died in 1904. But he did a lot of, he was a photographer, an English photographer, but then he was traveling around the world, and then he ended up in States. And he was very interested in this idea of capturing the motion frame by frame. So at that time there was, I think it was during 1960s, there was a bet that the galloping horse, its legs are either, some were saying that they are all up in the air, and some were saying that no, it doesn't leave the ground even when it's galloping. So he was hired to do a photographic evidence that whether the galloping horse, when it's running at full speed, whether all the 4 feet are in the air or not. So he devised a method, and I'll see if I have, I think I don't have the image here. So he had 12 cameras, 12 or 15 cameras, and they would trip when the horse would pass through them, because he has a rope across, and when horse would touch that, it would trip and it will take an image. And this was the evidence that yes, there is a galloping horse, all the 4 feet are up in the air. So he did a lot of studies on these locomotion. And this is one example of his. You can see that. It's all still images. And then he invented, it was before the film and everything else, before the projections and stuff. He invented this other technology too. I think it's called, if I'm pronouncing it right, phenakistoscope disc. So it will be, all the still images or the drawings would be on this disc. And then you would watch it one by one, because there will be a slot and you can see it. There will be light coming through it. And then you can see it, and then you will see this kind of a motion. Okay, my other question is, how many, when somebody says animation, how many animation you can think of? How many styles of animation you can think of?
So many.
Yes?
I love the claymation.
Claymation is one, yes. It's stop motion, claymation, yeah.
I just kind of think of different styles, like when you think of like
Bob's Burger style versus Family Guy versus even Rick and Morty style, like that kind of like subtle differences, but they create a whole different world.
Yeah.
And then Felix, what was his name? Felix Colbert. His whole style, which is very psychedelic style, it's very. I think of like the actual drawing styles.
Yeah.
3D rendering?
Yeah, 3D is one. So basically you can divide it into 3D animation, 2D animation, and then frame by frame, stop motion animation. And then there's another one, rotoscoping. Anyone know what rotoscoping is? Okay, so we'll talk about that. And the other one is, so one is rotoscoping, and then there's another one, motion graphic. Motion graphic is when you take still images or text and you move it over time, and it seems that people can perceive that there's a motion. It's not a still image anymore. This is called
That
motion
sounds too
graphic.
like I have an app called Talking Pet, and so I can make anything talk and make its face move. So
Yeah.
whether it's a chive or whether it's a dog or whether it's a minion,
Yeah, yeah,
I can
yeah.
make it come to life, and that's a lot of fun. Lots of fun.
So this is rotoscoping. Rotoscoping is this idea of drawing frame by frame on an image or a film image. So you draw frame by frame. And this is an old technique. And here you can see there would be a transparent, like there would be a glass on this drawing board, and it would be transparent. And there would be at the back projection. So you will project one image and the artist would draw it, and then on the paper, and then there would be another image and another image. And then these images would be photographed by a film camera. And then it will become this one sequence of animation. But I'll show you some modern rotoscopy that people have done. Let's open with, so this is one. This is Edward Muybridge, his horse. They were taken, and then somebody did frame by frame animation, or that drawing or that. There is another one, same kind of idea. So you draw frame by frame. And when you run them in a sequence, you get this idea or this feeling of that it's not a still image, it's moving image, though it consists of all those still images. Right. So I would show you some of my work, some of my experiments that I've done, and then we'll do some, if we have time, I think we'll see. We might do a small exercise in stop motion animation, so frame by frame, capturing something, and then over time you can see that it moves. So I have this, I'll show you what my process is. This is, I'll close this one. So this is a doll, and I think I did it with my friend. Maybe he was over. There was a New Year party when I was in Montreal, 2007, and so he was asking me about stop motion animation. He was very interested in that, so I said, let's do that. So I have this doll, and we animate it, and it's just I had my DSLR camera, and I took one image, and then we will move it slightly. Another image, and we will move it slightly like this. And then over time, you can see that it's moving. So we'll move parts of it in every frame, but slight parts, so you don't want to move a lot. So I'm also very interested in this idea of using technology to make all these processes or process of animation as quick as possible and as easy as possible. So, and I'm also interested in open source. So I have this, I discovered this software. It's called Processing. It's an open source software. You can do a lot of stuff with this. You can produce animation, you can produce games with it. It's mainly, you work with code to produce work very quickly. But this software has a very good tool to another tool that I discovered. It's the tool that it has, it's called Movie Maker. And what you can do, you can feed it, you can feed this sequence of still images to it, and you can specify what would be your frame rate, how many frames it should run per second, and then some compression. Okay. So here I will choose this particular folder. It will open it. Then I'll say that I wanted 5, let's say put it to 7 frames per second. And if I have a sound, I could also choose a sound file, and it will link it up, and then I'll have the final movie. Okay? So the next step I'll do, I'll say create movie. And then maybe I'll put it on my desktop. And I can make it maybe dull.
And Riaz, I
Yes.
emailed you the Vimeo link
Okay.
to the film, and I can tell you exactly where, so for this particular processing one that we did.
Okay. If I go to my desktop, and let's see. So it's as simple, as quick as possible. And it's free software, it's open source, so, and it's very fun to play with. So you can use any camera, you can use your phone camera, you can use any digital camera, any DSLR camera, even you can use video camera and just get frames from there. And then you put it in a folder, and you feed it to this software, and it will spit out a movie for you. And you can control the frame rates and everything.
Great.
Yes?
I got a question. Film, generally, you need 24 frames to make it look convincing in reality. You need less, I think, for animation. Do you know how many you need?
It depends on, depending on your animation, but usually you can get away with 15 frames per second, 18 frames per second. You can get away with that. So the frame rates are kind of dependent on the media or the medium that you want to show. So for the film, it's 24 frames per second. Traditionally, you have to have 24 frames to see that the motion is, or perceive that it's moving images. It's not still images, not like one image after another, but it's just continuous moving image. In TV, for North America, for NTSC, it's 30 frames per second. And for games, it's somewhere from 24 to 60 to 120 frames per second. And for VR, if you want to have Oculus Rift or some other kind of experiences, then you should have at least 60 frames per second to get those, to get this idea of that it's all seamless, it's moving with your head and everything.
Then you're almost actually perceiving it, like right there.
Yes, yes, and you won't feel that delay, there's still delay. But for this kind of animation, you can get away with 18, 15 frames per second. I did it 7 frames per second and it seemed fine. So, because the other thing is like that for animation, you have to, yes, you had a question? Okay. That you have to, as you said, that you have to spend a lot of time. You have to give a lot of time. It's very, sometimes it's frustrating too because you want to do a little bit of animation, a quick one, but then it takes such a long time just to move this object slowly and slowly. So you don't want to go for 30 frames per second. You do some experiments and see like, okay, so if I do it 7 frames per second, can I get away with 5 frames per second? Even 4 frames per second. If it looks fine, yeah, go with that.
And well,
Yes.
I'll just give my experience, because
Yeah.
Riaz showed me this processing after he did a projection mapping on local dancer. She's wearing a dress and he was literally projecting just on her dress as she was dancing. And then Keegan took about 50, 60 photos of her. And nobody had sort of filmed it, but then we took all those photos and put it in processing, and then there was like a little animation of that. Anyway, it was very, very cool. So then when we were working on our film Long Walk Home, we have this one segment where Sheila Burnford, she wrote this movie, The Incredible Journey, which some of you might know as Homeward Bound, and then she got thousands of letters from people. So we wanted to like show these thousands of letters. So we had an idea that we set up like her whole, I don't know if you want to,
Yeah, I'll
if you
show
can
that.
load it up.
Yeah.
And so we had to do it twice because the first time, so it's not just a matter of getting this idea of how you could do it. So we set up all the letters and we set it up in this environment, and then we literally had a camera and we took a picture, added a letter, took a picture, added a letter, took a picture, added a letter, took a picture, till the whole stack of letters was there. And then we wanted to finish it on a particular letter. And so we did all that, and then we put all those pictures into processing, and it was very cool animation, but we had done it in a room where there was light, and I even noticed in your doll one, you just did it in your kitchen.
Yeah.
And when the light changed, you notice, right?
Yeah.
So then it takes away from the illusion of this inanimate object moving. So we learned from that. So then we went into the studio, set it all up nice with lighting, totally controlled, and it took about an hour to film, to photograph all of these. So it's at 22 minutes and 16 seconds, yeah. We won't have sound, but yeah. So, and later we can show you Alyssa's animation. No, it's just going to come. This is the end.
The book was so popular, my mother was inundated with letters and invitations from book clubs and literary groups to speak about her writing, her success, and of course about her animals. During these talks, she would claim the distinction of being the first author ever to share her bed with all 3 of her characters at the same time.
Mostly, I've had a tremendous amount of letters, an enormous amount, and I haven't had one single sort of crackpot letter or sort of begging letter or anything like that in any of them. They've all been completely charming letters from people who just said, thank you very much. When I read it, or I asked my brother, or I gave it to the children or Granny to read or something, and they've been delightful letters.
One of my mother's favorite letters came from a particular fan of the book, Walt Disney, asking for a signed copy for his personal library.
Okay, so now we did that, but we didn't move the camera. We set up the camera on a fixed tripod, and we used a remote to take the picture, and then so one person operated the camera and one person just moved the things, and then I did it a couple of times in processing because it was this whole question of like how many frame rate. Then what we did was then in I guess I was using Final Cut. Anyway, then I used motion animation, which we'll talk about with just regular graphics, and I just literally zoomed in slowly using keyframes into this. So it made it a little bit more interesting than just the static with the pages flipping. But anyway, it was very effective, and it was strangely, people really liked this because it just told so much that without saying that she got, that we really showed. And that was just like a tiny little package, so.
Can I just say I worked on the movie and I had no idea that that was animation. For some reason, I just watched it and it was
Right.
kind of like.
Yeah, like you don't, like, well,
It just registered as a scene.
right.
And again, your frame rate wasn't like consistent with the movie. But it worked really well, effectively.
Yeah, so there's two animations in there. So like the first is with processing, the second one is manipulating the animation that you can do in all editing programs, so that you could take something that you shot, and I'm going to talk about this later when I talk about the 360 camera,
Yeah.
how you can animate using keyframes to be like the best cinematographer in the world, like the smoothest camera moves and everything. But anyway, but it was a learning process, and I guess that's the thing about animation is when it works, it's just like good editing, you don't notice it, but you get that idea.
And you don't need to have some kind of an like a doll or some kind of other object. You can have like these letters or any documents or even like still images. You can put them one after the other, just take an image, and it becomes this really interesting to look at.
There's those ones like the tutorials or documentaries where somebody's like writing and drawing with a marker.
Yeah.
Like, they erase and stuff.
Riaz, while you're there, if you want to look at that photograph that you did,
Yeah, so where is that? Did you know?
I have it. I was just gonna get it. It's I'll find it. Oh, sorry, I went too far. Well, one thing about like all kinds of documentaries and things that you've seen, what's the name of the guy who did Civil War? Ken Burns. So even in your iPhoto thing, there's a thing, it's called Ken Burns effect. That's animation. He made a whole series, TV series about the American Civil War, and it was all made with like photographs. He didn't have any motion picture, but it was all like zooming into photographs, and a lot of that was done actually literally with camera, like the old way. The cameramen would shoot these photographs and do moves, but then in the editing, dissolving, transitions and everything, that was like a form of animation. Then now it's even more and more sophisticated. It's like amazing.
Yeah, one famous example is my favorite artist. His name is Chris Marker, and his film La Jetée. I'll just quickly bring it up. So this is done in, I think, 1962 or 63, and it's all still images and voiceover, nothing else. But it's such an effective film. And it's this whole idea of just using still images. I'll just forward.
À Orly le dimanche, les parents mènent leurs enfants voir les avions en partance. De ce dimanche, l'enfant dont nous racontons l'histoire devait revoir longtemps le soleil fixe, le décor planté au bout de la jetée.
And there's only one film shot or moving shot. It's just a woman she blinks. And it just really surprises you because you are expecting that nothing would blink. It's all still images. You just put one shot of just blinking eye.
So I have a question. When that's being shot, there's a subtle shake to it. Is
It's
that a conscious sort of way of doing it? Like as opposed to what Kelly was saying, like you set the camera up on a tripod so it's totally, or some sort of an
No, I
apparatus
think
or
it's the
It's the film
it's
transfer.
the film
Oh, is it?
transfer.
Okay.
Yeah, because the projector
Oh yeah, sure.
it's shaking a bit too, and then when you're filming it to transfer it to digital, yeah.
So I found that,
You did? All right.
it's at 9:48.
Okay.
And I was trying to find the, original photo
9.
to show, at 9 minutes and 48 seconds. Yeah, it's just coming up there.
When he was studying medicine at Cambridge University, he was a colorful fellow who was a rowing blue on the Cambridge boat team. He also rowed for Britain at the Hitler Olympics in 1936 in Berlin. An interesting detail made even more interesting by the fact that he was one generation removed from the family name being changed from Bernstein to Burnford. Like Sheila, my father was raised in comfort, the son of a successful London physician who was also a decorated veteran of the Great War and the Boer War. David was someone who loved to be around animals and who enjoyed
this one?
sporting
This is it,
life.
here. Do you see
My
just a
parents
very
conducted
slight-
a traditional courtship, dances, dinners, and of course walks. Generation removed from the family name being changed from Bernstein to Burnford.
So look at the boat when you see it.
Like Sheila, my father was raised in comfort, the son of a successful London physician who was also a decorated veteran of the Great War and the Boer War. David was someone who loved to be around animals and who enjoyed the
Yes.
sporting
Can you
life.
stop it?
My parents
There. So this was a really crappy still photo, like really crappy. It was like that big, and it was pretty crummy. So Riaz took it, cleaned it all up, separated the boat, and then
Yeah, so what you do, the process, I will just quickly demo one simple thing too for you guys. But you take it in Photoshop, then you divide up or separate the foreground from the background, and you have your own layers. So in Photoshop, there's this concept of layers, so you can save it one layer after the other. And then you can bring it in another motion graphic program. It's called After Effects, and then you can animate those still images, and it will look really. It's kind of. It gives this illusion of that it's a moving image. It's not a still image anymore.
and but also like this is my request was, can you try to make these like 3D? So like when you're, so people have taken treatment of photographs, and with that same process, it makes it look like you're looking at a 3D instead of just a very flat snapshot. It kind of gives it a little bit of 3D. And just with that, just that tiny bit of movement and that separation. And so these are just, you know, I wanted to do this to like every photo, but I don't know how long that took you, but it took a while, right?
Yeah, it does take a while.
Is that kind of similar to, you see sometimes on documentary channel that they have the still images, but they look separated, right? That
Yeah, they look
that
really.
people look
Yeah.
like they're outside of the frame of the photograph.
Yes.
That,
Yeah.
Yes.
how is that? How do they accomplish that?
Well, you do the same thing as you do it with Photoshop. Like you will separate the background and the foreground, and then you also, when you put it in the motion graphic software, usually it's After Effects is the software. It has a 3D camera, so you can place the background because it's on a separate image. You can place it slightly behind the foreground.
So when you have that one separated,
Yeah.
are you kind of cutting out the image of the person and
Yes.
putting that on a separate.
Yes.
So does that image of that person still remain on that background photo, but you don't?
No, it doesn't remain
You
on
fill
the
it
back.
in?
You just totally remove it from the background. And the space that's left there, because there is an empty space,
Yeah.
you fill it with the surrounding background. So it seems like it's just
Oh,
plain
okay,
background.
okay. Kind of like when you're fixing up a scratch or a rip in a photograph in
Yes.
Photoshop, same thing?
Yeah, same thing. I'll show you. Do you guys know Dennis? Dennis Dubinsky used to work here. So he was my coworker, and he's an actor too. So I was experimenting with this new plugin. Plugin are small softwares for After Effects, and somebody has released it. It's open source. It's called Duik, and it's for 2D animation. So I asked him if he doesn't mind if I can take one of his image and then take it in Photoshop and just do something with it. So we were just being silly on that day, so I did that. But this is body parts of Dennis. So this is still image, and then you can see these are, I divided this all into different parts. So these are all these layers in Photoshop. So you take a still image, you remove the background, then I could just have these, all these parts, and I named it. So when I import it in After Effects, I know that this is the right arm, this is the left arm. And then I did one small animation because Dennis was all game for that.
That's Dennis for you.
So this is just from one still image.
I want you to submit that to get an award too, you know that.
So you can, even like with just still images, something like that, you don't need to have a big crew, you don't need to have a lot of, say, material. If you have even limited material, you can work with it, you can make something really interesting and fun.
And what's the name of that software?
It's called Duik, D-U-I-K. This one. Yeah, but instead of doing this one, I would show you another software that's very, very good. It's Unity. So Unity is, it's not open source, but it's free software. And it's used for making games, video games. But it has a lot of other uses too. One is it is an excellent animation tools. Very easy to use. And this software itself, the learning curve is it's very gentle. So it's not difficult to learn. But it's a gaming software, but you can use it to make 2D and 3D animation, and also motion graphics. And it's free. So another very good software.
So Riaz, would a lot of these programs would probably have videos on YouTube if you want to have particular kind of tutorials for them, anything like that?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. So again, processing has a huge community, a lot of tutorials, and the same with Unity too. Yeah. And this young guy, he's he can tell you more about Unity because he uses it a lot. Yeah.
How can you tell us like how you found it in terms of learning how to use it?
In terms of learning how to use it?
Yeah, like was it difficult? Was it, or what were the things that stumped you maybe at first?
Mainly the coding. But yeah, that's really the main thing that was hard to get over.
And how good was your like coding before you tried it out? Did you need to have a fair bit of experience with coding, or could somebody like me who has like 3 very short attempts at coding from Arduino, could I do it?
Yeah, you can do it. You just like need to know what function does what. That's it.
What does that mean? What function is what?
I think what he's trying to say is find your own 10-year-old.
Right, thanks a lot.
Or pay me.
So functions are in programming. Functions are instructions, set of instructions that you can put together, call it something,
And
you
a
can give it a
keystroke.
name, and then you can call it anywhere in your program. So instead of retyping everything, you can just say call that function, and it will execute all the instructions that you have written inside that function.
And are there people like, you know, when we did Arduino,
Yeah.
there was all kinds of people who had done that, those functions, and then
Yes.
you could like, they did all the work of doing all the coding and everything, and
Yeah.
then you could just get the recipe, basically.
Yes, that's very true too. So it's a good introduction here because it's a good break, because I totally forgot about it yesterday. This is Arduino. Have you guys, do you guys know or have heard about it? He knows, but anyone else? You have? Okay. So this is a small, kind of a small computer. It can attach to your computer for writing some simple code. And then you can have inputs and outputs. These are pins here. So you can get some kind of a sensor. Say one simple example would be, say, a light sensor. So it can detect light. And the other one could be an LED here. So when you can program it when it gets a bit dark, turn on this light. And when it's, so you can do a lot of physical computing with that. So it's very inexpensive. Again, open source. You can buy it for, I think it's $22. And then once you program it, you don't need to attach it to your computer. It's self-sufficient, and it will do its work.
And what have you done,
In Arduino,
Rafi? Yeah, what have you made with Arduino?
I've made a lot of projects.
Okay, so give us an example.
An example like a light which I can control. Like, you know, the fan switch, there's a little knob which you can turn around. So I basically took some components and I could turn around it to adjust the brightness of a light.
Okay, like a dimmer switch.
Yeah.
You made your own dimmer
Like
switch.
a dimmer lighter.
Yeah, and he's
Yeah,
also working on a big project, yes.
Self-driving car. Basically.
It's a big jump.
Self-obstacle avoiding car.
Self-obstacle avoiding car and also self-driving. You know. But it's on a small scale.
Right, right.
And so once
So
it
you have
gets-
like sensors that will tell the car to like stop or turn or swerve, or
Yeah.
is that how you're? And then you're programming the sensitivity of the sensors, or?
How do you control what sensors are there and how do you control the sensor?
Okay, what sensors I'm using? Motors.
Mm-hmm.
One thing is called an ultrasonic sensor. It measures the distance of how far, how near, and a servo motor, which allows the ultrasonic sensor to look right and left.
Cool.
So the sensor itself, the ultrasonic sensor, it's installed on a servo motor. Servo motor can rotate in 180 degree, not like 360.
Okay.
So it can rotate from left to right. So it's constantly looking left and right. It's like eyes. And then it can tell the car whether the obstacle is coming by. So slow down, and when it's like there, then if it can, and then look around, and if it can find something else that's clear on the left side, then it should turn left or otherwise turn right. So
Good project.
yeah.
Maybe Google will hire you. Or no, who is it that did the,
A lot of people are
Self-
doing it. Google is doing it.
Yeah.
Uber is doing it. Because Uber business model is based on.
oh, yeah, okay, right.
And so if they have this autonomous cars, then the dependency on the drivers are also
Yeah.
less, which creates a big problem as far as jobs are concerned.
Right.
But their business model is more lucrative than it's about, so. But yeah.
Okay.
So I would go into next topic is about graphic motion. This is one project I was looking today to find some examples, and I totally forgot about this project. It's I've done this for one of my friend in her company. It was based in Toronto. Now she's in England. So it's in Flash Player. Okay, just give me a second. I'll put it on.
Can you turn those front lights off? 'Cause you can't, it's really hard to see the screen. Okay, but, let's just see what that looks like. Riaz is in the glow of the computer, that's, I'm gonna just open one of these side windows.
Oh, it's not opening up. So this is the example of motion graphic using text, and then it's rotoscopy. She and her friend, they were doing this martial art. It's an Indian martial art. And the video that they had, it was kind of really low resolution, and they wanted to use that video. So I suggested, why don't I do a rotoscopy on that, draw frame by frame, and then use that for their title, like for their website. So just simple things, simple animation, simple things, and it looks much better than the video. So.
But this is the video, frame by frame.
Frame by frame, it's called rotoscopy.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do you didn't draw each of those by hand?
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yes, frame by frame.
Okay.
But it was in computer. So instead of using a projector or anything else, I used a computer. There are different programs where you can take a video and then tell it to divide it into still images and save it in some kind of a folder. And once it's saved, then you can go open each one and then start drawing on it. And you can use your mouse, but I use drawing tablet. Do you have a tablet here?
I have a very small portable one.
Yeah.
Which kind of programs would you use to put the
Film
in, to make it into small pictures?
I used, for this one, when I was working, Flash was around, and it was a big thing, so I used Flash. It was very easy to work with. But now you can use...
any editing.
Any editing software you can use.
Any editing?
Yeah.
I did that for you.
Can you draw? You can, but usually it's not a very smooth process. So I would say use Photoshop.
Can you bring the video into Photoshop?
Yes. Yes,
Oh,
you
and
can.
then you can go frame by frame.
You can go frame by frame in there too, I assume. I haven't done work with that, but that's one thing you can do.
But remember we did green screen, and I took the, so we filmed dogs on green screen, and then I just exported out like the dog running, and then I exported it out frame by frame.
And you did that on?
I just did that with Final Cut Pro, but any video editing program can export it out as a image sequence. And then you have those image sequences, and then just like you
Okay.
imported in your drawings,
Yeah.
then you can draw over them and make a layer. It's just a reference, right?
Yeah, it's a reference. And that's what, when I was showing you examples of rotoscopy here for the horses that people have done based on Edward Mybray study, they have changed, like they have taken the motion, but they have changed the way the horse look. So you can do that. You don't have to exactly copy that particular stuff that you are trying. Yeah, so you can change a few things there too. Another example is, if you remember, we used to have DVDs a few years back, and it was big in fashion.
The old days.
Yeah.
Used to.
Some of us did a lot of DVD production.
Yeah, and then it was a big thing about like how do you design your title in DVDs. So when DVD starts, your movie title or something, it was all motion graphics too. So a lot of people were using that. So so again, a friend of mine, she asked me if I could design something for her, and she gave me, and I took her still image, one still image, and I changed it and made it really big, and then this idea of that it's kind of a motion, it's not just still image. So. So she's a dancer, and it was her. So this is an example of motion graphics. You can take a still image, you can use text, you can use sound with that, and then you can create something that's interesting than just a still image. And this is also animation too. So. Another example I will show you. It's again rotoscopy. And this was from my village. I was, this guy, he was very athletic, and I just shoot him like he was doing different stuff, but I liked this idea of him jumping, so I rotoscope over that. And then I was thinking about using this one image in different ways. So, and then changing the timing. So it's just like one image. You can do a lot of stuff with these kind of things. Make it more interesting, make it more something different. So, and this is just like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 seconds of video. It's one shot. And then you can do different stuff with that.
Is it the real shot, or is it?
It's a real shot.
And then you moved it make it into the figure.
No, I draw. It's rotoscoping, so I draw. So I took it, the 5-second video. I divided it into frames, and then I took each frame. I didn't draw the background or anything. I just draw over his figure, and at the end I had these line drawings. Once I had that, because I was using Flash at that time, Flash is very good at, there's this concept of vector versus pixels. So pixels are, they are limited in terms of, it takes space, whatever you draw. So if you draw something, say 300 pixels by 200 pixels, if you try to zoom in on that, it will, or make it big, it will look pixelated because it's pixels. It's like the physical content of the computer. But vector it's a mathematical term, so it's free of this constraint that it's geographical constraint. So it's just a space and point. So even if you draw something very small in a vector program, you can print it as large as the screen or this building, and it will look really sharp. So though my image was very small, my video camera, because I was using the old camera, And it was really far away shot too, so he was very small too. But when I draw it, it was vector based, so I could increase it, I could do anything with it, and it will remain crisp, the image itself.
So did you do that, what program did you?
I was using Flash at that time.
Okay, Flash. Now, so, but Photoshop isn't vector based,
No,
right?
no, Photoshop is and is not, depending on what kind of tool you use.
Okay.
So Photoshop has this tool, it's called pen tool. If you use that to draw, then it saves it as vectors.
Okay.
Those drawings of yours, it's just like it's a points in space.
Right.
So then it's free of resolution.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the difference between Illustrator? Because isn't it all?
Illustrator is all, like everything you do in Illustrator.
Is drawing.
It's drawing, but it's all vector based.
Okay.
So, but then it has some limitation with, if you are working with vector-based programs, it's not good for gradation. So if your image, like photographic image, it has really, it's nothing more than gradation of the colors from one to another, or even the same color, really fine gradation. Photoshop is good with that because it's pixel-based. But if you are working with Illustrator, Illustrator works with this big chunk of like change of same color, same color, same color. So it's good for that, not for any kind of gradation.
Can you do stuff in Photoshop, pixel based, and then convert it into vector based once you're happy with your photo?
You can do that, but I would it depends on what kind of look do you want. Because when you change it from pixel-based to vector-based, there's change, like it will affect your photograph. It will, so the gradation, like if you have, say, 3 colors, going from, say, really bright to a bit slightly lower bright, same color, it will, in vector-based work, it will all mix it into one color. So you lose that fine detail. But then you can print it as big as you want, and it would be crisp. So that's another thing too. Okay. So I was, I think that's good enough. For, or do we have time for?
Can you show the Unity?
Yes, I can show the Unity. Yes, I'll quickly demo that.
So I'll just explain.
Yeah.
I had this idea. We were doing installation with our big screen, and we had gone to Ottawa, and it was around Remembrance Day, and they were projection mapping poppies falling on the Parliament, and every poppy symbolized a soldier that died in the First World War. So I told that to Riaz, and then I was doing an installation of footage that I had done and a story about a soldier from here. And then but I told Riaz how cool it was to see these poppies falling, and that they were projected onto a building.
Do you have that image or that video itself? No.
I don't think I have it.
I don't have it either.
Oh.
But we will create something from scratch. So this is Unity, and when you open Unity, it gives you this option of, like if you already have some projects, you can open them, or you can start new. So I would start a new project. Right. And then I'll give it a name, let's say, particles, and then you can work with 2D if you want to make your game or your animation or anything in 2D. You can select 2D, but we will keep 3D. Create project. And then again, Unity is free. It's free as long as you are not making, I think it's 100,000? 100,000 per year.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as you're not making 100,000, it's free. Once you're making 100,000, then you will give them some money. It's a very small amount of money. So it has, once you open Unity, it has, in the start, it seems like it's a bit too much, but once you start working with it, it's very simple. It's very easy to use. So this is the main, the director view. This is where people would see when you finish your game or your project. It's this window. All your 3D objects would come in here. And this is your assets. If you are importing, say, some still images or sound or your 3D models from somewhere else, they will all go in the assets folder. So right now I'll use just one still image, and maybe we'll use this one, rose flower. This is an image from internet. So what I'll do, I need to remove the background. So I will open with Photoshop, okay, because I need the transparent image to make it look like that there are a lot of flowers one after the other, or they are moving in the air or something. So I will select the white background. I'll do just a rough one, and then copy this thing and delete it. So I have removed the background, and I could just trim it. So this is my final image. I could save it. A PNG file. So JPEG, the difference between a JPEG and a PNG file is that JPEG doesn't retain the idea of transparency, or the information about that some images are transparent, or there are parts of it that are transparent. PNG can retain this information, that we have removed the background, so if we put this image on top of something else where it's transparent, like here, you can see the other image that's in the background. So I will put it in maybe desktop and call it rose. Then
got rid of the P, but I don't know if that'll work at all.
I did?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to this.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I need to add the P.
No
Please.
good.
Good. Then I'm in Unity. So in Unity have or a lot of motion graphics softwares. They have this idea of particles. So particle mimics the real life kind of real life objects or phenomena, like say fire or smoke or rain. So they are made of in real world, like rain is made of small particle, and same is with the smoke, and same is with fire. And then when you put them together, then it looks like that it's a fire. When you put small particles together, when you put like a lot of raindrops together, it seems like that it's raindrops. So this idea of, so I will call this, I'm creating an empty game object. I'm calling it particles. I could call it anything else. So here's my particle. And then in Unity, Unity has this idea of that any game object, you can, instead of writing code or typing something, you can, Unity gives you built-in objects, visual objects, so you don't need to write code for them. It's already there for you. Right? So I'll say add component, and here I would say particle system. So particle system, right now I can see there are some stuff that's already being produced for me. And it's the default particles. So I want to change this, instead of this default particle, to have these flowers coming out. Okay. So what I'll do, I'll get my rose PNG and just drop it in my assets. So, and once it's there, it automatically says that it's a 2D image, and then I would add another thing that alpha is transparent, so we can see the transparency, and then say apply. And the other thing I'll do, I will create a material. Material is this idea of that every 3D object has a material, and material is the information about how the light, when it hits that object, how does the light behaves on that object. Does it reflect? Does it absorb some light? Those kind of stuff. So I will call it rows material. All right. And in albedo is like the light information. I will put the rows in. So that's all I need to do. And in the particles, I will first of all change the render. Material, I will say I'll drop in my rose material that I made. Here. So I have my roses coming out, but it's not looking good. So I have to change this render. Render is idea of that how should the light reflect on this, or light behave on this object. So I would change it into something else, particles, and let me say particle, maybe too soft, or no, this is not even. Standard unlit is good. Okay. And then, instead of opaque, I'm saying that it is cut out. Yeah. So I have my flowers now. And this particles give me so many options for a lot of different stuff, for like how long its life should be, how long it should stay on the screen, how many should I begin with, and also what's the emission, the shape that it's emitting from, it's starting from. So I can change all those things. Let me change a few things here. Size or lifetime. Shape here. Okay, so right now we can see the shape is a cone. I can change this into, say, let's say box. So it's just straight. I can change it into something else. Say hemisphere. This seems like a good one. Okay, and then I could also change my camera. Instead of it having this skybox, I could say solid color, and I could change it to maybe white color. And let's go to particles. So it's already looking a bit better, and I could move it slightly forward up there. So there, now the flowers are falling down. I can change the gravity. Instead of them falling down, I can move them fall down really fast, or move them go up.
Can you import an image for the background?
Yes, you can import an image. You can do anything here. You can import videos here. You can have anything. Yeah. So it's kind of like there are so many controls here. You can change velocity or lifetime, so it can start very fast or very slow, and then it could go when it's it can go faster or it can go slower. You can change a lot of stuff. I will change one thing. I'll add a bit of noise to it. So noise is this concept in in physics that it will add, instead of it just going straight in a straight line, it would add a bit of noise, a bit of degradation to that, to its path, and it will look more natural. So I would say noise, and then I could put strength. So now they are kind of looking like bees or behaving like that.
So
and
could you then like do another one and they would layer over another?
Yes,
So then
yes.
you have like,
Yes, you can have another particle system, you can have another particle system.
so
you
one
can-
particle system's like throwing a rainbow out and
Yeah.
another one is the sun rising up and
Yes, yes.
something like
And
that.
the best thing about this, this software is that you can then export this, whatever you are seeing here, as a movie file with alpha channel. So if you don't want any background,
Right.
you can have a movie file without any background. So it will just have the transparency, it will remain, it will keep the transparency. So you can layer this movie image on top of another video, and it will look like that it's part of it. So say, suppose you create something, rain effect, and you have your scene here, there's no rain here, but you can put it on top of that and it will look like that it's raining.
And then you could have like Pigpen, or I don't know, you guys know Charlie Brown? Pigpen, and he's always followed around by a cloud of dirt and whatever. So then, I guess then you could have that thing, and then you could, with motion graphics in your other program, with keyframes, then you could like move it following your character. Like a real, like one other kind of animation that we didn't sort of mention, but was, you know, so Disney was the big developer, but Mary Poppins, they mix live action with animation, which is like another really cool thing.
Yeah, so this is just a simple demo of, you can do a lot of stuff with this. And this software, you can do 2D animation. It's very simple, very easy. You can bring your 2D character that you have drawn, and then you can put bones on that. So it has, you can attach bones. So if you move, say, this hand, the way our hands move, so if I move my hand, my other bones and other parts of the body would move with that too. So if I stretch, this thing also stretch. So you don't have to spend a lot of time trying to do a 2D character animation, frame by frame, moving every part. No, just move. You can select a keyframe. Keyframe is this concept in computer editing programs, that computer, you can do 2 keyframes over time. So say your one keyframe is at 1 second, the other one is at 3 seconds. So you have these 2 keyframes, and you can change the last keyframe slightly, the object that you have, you can change its position, and the computer will calculate automatically for every frame. You don't have to do all the calculation that to reach to this particular position. So it will change, it will rotate, it will do everything for you, and then you can be there. So 2D animation becomes very, very, like a lot more easier than doing it frame by frame and moving every part. So you just do the keyframes, and that's it. You can, yes.
I guess like a comment I have on like all the different kinds of animation you've been showing is that there's sort of like a lot of different ways that you can get the same results. So if you're envisioning like an animation of any sort,
Yeah.
you know, you can just work with whatever medium you're comfortable with or whatever medium you want to like explore, and then you can reach that conclusion, right? So
Yes.
you can use photography or stop motion or everything, and you can get the same effects, right?
Yes. Yeah, but then it depends on how much time do you have, what kind of resources you have, what kind of the team that you have, what kind of abilities they have too. So all those things you have to consider too. And how much, like the time is the main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's still like people are doing still drawing on paper, on vellum, like each frame by frame.
That takes forever.
Yeah, but it takes forever. And usually, like if you look at the big studios or the big productions, they have like hundreds and hundreds of artists working for them. So each artist would do maybe one scene. Some are just responsible for the background. Some are just responsible for one character. Some are just responsible for just the hand, or just changing the hand. So they will draw different hand positions. So those kind of stuff.
I've met full-time animators, and it's kind of a struggle.
Yes.
Because
So
the
that's
deadline's
why.
pushing a lot, and
Yeah.
you're just spending every hour of the day creating 10 seconds of a TV show, and you're just moving people's arms, and then people are telling you, I don't like that. And
You know, there's a problem now, like, because 3D animators, they used to be a lot in demand, but because there are a lot of software that are coming in and a lot of ready-made stuff that you can get online, so you don't need to hire a 3D that much, like a 3D animator. So, but with technology, if you can take advantage of that, why not? Make your life easier and simpler.
So in the processing that you showed, it was pretty easy that if you take pictures and then put them in a folder and then, simply configure the processing software, voila, here it is,
Yes.
the movie's there.
Yes.
That's quite simple.
Mm-hmm.
And is it that simple in Unity as well?
No, Unity doesn't have this. In Unity, you cannot do this frame by frame animation. Like you cannot have still images in another folder and then tell it to bring it here. You can do that. There is a way you can even do that in particle. Like you can have sequence of animation for a particle instead of just, because I brought in single image, but if I have a GIF or a sequence of images, I could brought that and it could animate. So the cloud could be just like falling or doing something over there. Yeah. But everyone has like, so this is more for, I think the movie maker or the processing movie maker is simpler. This is a bit more complex, but then it gives you more options. Yeah.
So, well, just as a filmmaker who has tried to incorporate from the very basic just of taking, I do a lot of history films, so obviously I'm going to use a lot of still photographs, but it just doesn't work anymore to just like have a photograph and have it like a slideshow, like, or even just dissolve. You always want to, sometimes that's just very effective, but anyway, so you have to do that. But then every single project, every film that you're thinking of or your project, there's just some things that are just, it's kind of like, what is the easiest way to tell this story, or what would be the most effective? And so then you pick, your content is going to push you towards a style of animation, but it's anyway, it's similar to however you're going to capture your images. That it's you're just going to use it as a tool to do it, and it's going to have to fit the theme and give something. And you want to try to find the way forward that's the most efficient. And because even the whole editing process, once you capture images, it's very time consuming. So and sometimes you think, okay, I'm going to do this whole image or whatever, but maybe it would be easier just to get like some actors and a set and have them dress up and they reenact something. So anyway, I think that the thing is that when you are looking for the solution, like you have an idea of you're going to tell this particular story, like what the important thing is to find the story and the thing that you want to get across. Then you find the visual medium, that is going to best express that with the most punch, that was within your time budget and your actual cash budget and all the rest of it. So I was kind of thinking about Ruth's, did she just go, yeah, there you are. Okay, like your egg story, right? Like to me, that I just immediately pictured it as that could be like an interesting animation, and I could see doing it in Unity. Like just because of it's like all these eggs and some have a little difference and you can modify these eggs and you could make it so that, anyway, so I was just thinking that would be cool. Then the other story, like the porcupine, the stuffed animals with the sharps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that would be another.
You
could like you could use, you know, there's various kinds, but you stop animation, obviously.
And also just remember that, like for something, for some projects, or even one project might have different needs, and so you have to see, okay, so I can do it easily in, say, in this software or through hand drawing, but this part maybe I'll do stop motion, would work. So like Kelly project, she had like used different techniques of animation. So you have to look for those kind of stuff too. So just not fixate on just one solution, but look for different ways of doing this stuff. I'll just end it with two things. One is this idea of using machine learning. Machine learning is this new, not a new field, but it's kind of catching up for the past few years. And they are this idea of that instead of you writing a hard-coded instructions for a machine or for a software, you train it with the data sets. So you provide it with a lot of data sets, and then the machine starts learning. And it always learns, like it's kind of a child, and then it learns more and more and more, and it gets better and better.
Takes over the world.
Yes.
Planet
so there's this project that it's from one of the university, I'm forgetting the name, but they have done a lot, so they feed a lot of images of people from different angles. So any of your camera, like any webcam, anything, if you have that particular software, you can train it, and it's already been trained, and it will show your joint points, and then you can take that particular data here. You can see it can detect your eyes, your nose, and your ears, and also your skeletal. So your hand and your joints. So you can take that particular data. So you can have an actor that could act in front of the camera. Then you can take those particular points, and in Unity you can bring those points and put it on your character, and it will start moving. So you don't have to do like nothing in that sense. It's all automated for you.
Do you have to do it in front of the video, or can you send it, like put it in an already made video? Like
You can do both.
both?
Yes, you can do both.
Can you do that? Can you put it on now?
I can, but it will be like I need some light because it has
We
to
can
see.
turn the lights on.
Okay. But before I will show one more thing. It's a minute-long video, and I made it in 2003. And this idea of mixing still images and mixing your own image. So it was 2003, and I was at OCAD, and I was taking like some of my painting classes too. But there would be, at that time, there was this big debate in our class too between us, like, is video really an art form, or it's like only the painting and the sculpture is the art form? And also I was grappling with this idea of representation too, of usually Eurocentric subjects and people in a lot of movies and stuff. So this was my response to all those things, and I made kind of a lighthearted 1-minute video.
Art a reflection of what's going on in society at the time. It's a reflection of the frustrations or anxiety or joy that happens at that moment, at that time.
And we need to bring forward the rest of humanity. That's our duty as artists to bring forward.
Virtualization is international expression of our times.
the great rebellion of aesthetic mobilization. May you lead our
it's
steps
a male
down the path of the suspension of disbelief. Tonight, I am proud to say, in this great city of decadence, indulgence, and data, ich bin ein Berliner Künstler. Thank you.
That was fun.
And then we can do this now if you want.
Okay, I'll
Is
put a light
Yeah.
on.
Sorry, is it TensorFlow or TensorFlow?
TensorFlow. So TensorFlow is this algorithm that Google developed, and it made it into public realm in, I think, 2011. And now different developers are taking that algorithm and putting it into different programming languages. So JavaScript is a very famous kind of web language. So you can do a lot of stuff on the web. So you don't need to download it onto your computer. So you can do a lot of stuff on the web. So this is, I think it released maybe a few months before, 2 or 3 months. So people are really excited about this one.
So you can just import like a short, like 20-second film and like get them to show the.
Yeah, just to get the data of all the points of human beings, of all their motion data. And then you can take that motion data, those points, and put it on, say if you have a 3D character or a 2D character, you can put it on them, and then they will do this, they will mimic the same motion.
Right.
Yeah.
Have they done animals or is it just humans?
Right now it's just animals, but you can train if you have a big data sets, and there are a lot of free data sets.
Right.
So you can train, and like you can train your software to just read animals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's okay. So lights are on. Okay. Go to demo, and it will say allow. So it's now on the web. You can see it's already. It's my web camera. It's detecting all these points. And if there was more light, the detection is really good. So it detects my hands, my joints, and it's trying to detect my legs. So then you can take those points, and so if you want your character to move its right hand like this, all you have to do is just do this, and then these markers would be guiding for your character, and it will do the same thing. And it could move, it could dance, it could do other stuff.
And it's kind of like they had that at that, you know, there's that, we looked at it, there's it's one of those Adobe things.
Yeah.
Right? And so it was like they showed you, I forget what it's called, but you could draw your character, you put it in the program, and then you put your camera on, and then you move, and then your motion, it transfers into that. But this is a lot better.
Yeah. So another tool that I use a lot, it's this Connect sensor, Microsoft Connect sensor, and when it first came, one of few people, they hacked it because it was not supposed to go into your computer, and Microsoft was very mad about that. But then when they realized there was a lot of backlash and people were just doing some cool stuff with that, they allowed it. So now you can connect it to your computer, and it's very good at getting this human body skeleton data, but it's also good at getting it in 3D form. So if you have a 3D character, you can get all the points. And then the other thing, it's very good at space recognition, or the spatial kind of sense. So it can see that this chair is in front of you. It can detect that. So you can do a lot of installation. Say, suppose you have an installation where you want to trigger a film or some kind of sound when people come to certain distance, or when there are two people, or if they move their hand, or if they close their eyes or open their mouth. So you can can do a lot of stuff with this too. And it's very cheap. I think you can get it in a pawn shop right now for $30–40 because Microsoft has discontinued it. So people are selling it, nobody's using it. It's a very good tool for artists and for experimentation.
What is it called?
Microsoft Connect sensor.
It was for like games, so.
Yeah, it's for Xbox game.
You got
Yeah.
one at your house. Your mom uses it.
Yeah, you know.
Those dance games?
Right.
They use that.
So that's how they know how you're moving,
Yeah.
right?
I always thought it
It's
was
like when you did those
really-
sports,
Yeah.
sports games.
So people have developed, developers have developed softwares for those. You can, it can take your body data, you can move in front of it, and then you can animate your 3D character. So it's already there. So if you want to take advantage of that for animation, this is.
Or
And-
or a band player, if you do a little animation for your band. Yeah.
And one last thing is this Raspberry Pi.
It's not very tasty.
Yeah, it's not very tasty, but it's again kind of same thing as Arduino, but Arduino is not, it's limited in terms of computer. You cannot type anything, you cannot connect it to your, you cannot send emails and stuff like that, you cannot connect it to your screen, you cannot have it as an independent computer. But this one, it will cost, I think it cost almost $50, but it's an independent computer, full-fledged computer. You can have it for your installation, so if you want to run some kind of videos, you can put your video in here, connect it to your screen, and it will run. You can have emails, you can have, also it has pins for getting data. So if you have a sensors, it can get data, you can execute something. So very good for artists, very good for filmmakers, for installations. So again, very cheap, $50. Open source. A lot of help is available online. So, and it's fun to work with. Okay, I think that's it
Okay.
for.
Well, let's have a break. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for
Yeah.
this. Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah. And, okay, so what we're going to do is, we'll take our break and have some food and whatnot, but everybody keep, chatting, and we want to form our teams. Who's going to work with who? And so if you know, let's try to get at least, 3-4 teams of film ideas, and also people in Sioux Lookout, if there's someone here who might want to collaborate, I've done lots of different collaborations. It's really easy because you can just upload your media. And so if there's somebody who loves that library idea, for example, if somebody wants to do that here and somebody's doing it in Sioux Lookout, then you could have some team meetings via Skype and do some shooting, and then send your footage back and forth, because it doesn't take that long to upload and work virtually. So everything's a possibility. And so we'll be back in, let's say half an hour. So we can, mingle around, get a snack, and let's try to form some teams. And so you've got to convince people.
I don't know who does what, or who has a camera and all that, so I don't know what kind of team to
You could help, Kelly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
'Cause you know
Yeah,
everything.
we'll try to introduce you
gonna-
and give a,
okay,
no, like we're all gonna, everybody's got different skills in that, and so, maybe if people have some ideas of who they'd like to work with on a thing, then during the break, you can approach them and chat, and,
Or
And
you
then
can,
if you're having trouble finding somebody or convincing or whatever, but anyways, we're here to help you as mentors, like whatever skills you need for the project that you're gonna work on. Everybody can't do their own project, obviously, but there's lots of people here with all kinds of different.
Everybody will work on something.
Yeah, everybody will work on something. And, so, yeah, and then we're here to help you as mentors. Okay, let's have a break.